Hello and welcome everybody. Today I'm joined by Lester Smolsky. Me and Lester have done quite a few videos together, so if you're new to us chatting or rambling about things or pondering over life, then check out, just search for both of our names on YouTube and it will come up with, I think there are quite a few now, including an interview, not an interview, talk you did at one of my book launches as well.
Yeah, that was how to become conscious of your unconscious.
Yeah.
And we did a great one on self-love together as well, I think.
Yeah. And I think there's been a few other little ones here and there as well. We generally have a chat and then decide that that's insightful what we just said and we should just talk about it. Yeah. So that's what's happened recently. So here we are. Lester is a hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, coach, theta healer. What other strings to your bow other than that you're playing a band and things?
One of the other skills is old pain to go about clearing pain for people. But yeah, I'm also in a rock band. I've done about 200 gigs in my life. So I'm actually in two bands at the moment. But we're not doing a lot of gigs, but we're having fun.
That's good. That's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we all forget to have fun.
It's good. You know what's great about being in a band? One of the great things is it forces you to be in the now. Because you have to be in the now to remember the next word or to remember the next chord. And it's one of the best things for obviously, there's a lot of movement in it as well, so it's a good release.
So mindful music.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about the unconscious is I had to do a gig where we had to do about 35 songs, which is a lot. And we only had a chance to do 2 practices and we hadn't played in a long, long time. And it's amazing. I had this notion of how am I going to remember all the words and all the chords and everything, because I'm not one of these guys who does a music stand there. I try and memorize it. And I got this message in my mind saying, go and meditate. And I was like, well, I can't meditate. I've got all this practice to do. And I was like, no, go and meditate. So I went and meditated, had about 25 minutes, then came out, lifted my guitar, and I just seemed to remember all the chords, everything. And it's so interesting when you pay attention to your unconscious and everything's in there. So it is good.
Yeah, and that thought of this is going to be hard is what makes it hard, isn't it? And I try to stop that myself and give it a tap or breathe through it or tell myself it's nonsense, because it's that actual thought process that makes it hard.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Maybe the meditation kind of it switches that off, the overthinking and the worrying and which gets in the way, and just getting in tune with yourself.
I did that when I write my books. I meditate a lot, and that's why I think I don't get writer's block, because every time I start to feel a bit fatigued or a bit confused or I'm not sure what I'm doing, I go in and have a meditate, and then I'm like, oh, I'm back on form now.
That's brilliant.
So, yeah.
Just while you're saying that, there's a band I was watching a documentary about, their band, the Scorpions. They had that song "Wind of Change" and "Rock You Like a Hurricane," and they're a good band. But the guy who wrote most of the songs, Rudolf Schenker, he actually meditates before writing these sort of heavy metal type songs. And I thought, wow, and that's he said I would meditate, and I would write, and then I would meditate, and then I would write. And I was like, this is how these great albums came out. And I was like, no way, no one would have ever thought that. So
there you go, everyone that's watching. We haven't even started what we're talking about, but go and get meditating. It helps more than just our mental health.
After this video.
Yeah, not now. So this video is kind of about secondary gains, basically. And for people that are not really sure what they are, that's the church bells about to go off, I think. For people that are not really sure what they are things that we get from things that are possibly not very nice in our lives, that actually can keep us stuck in that not very nice space.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, for instance, when I was unwell with chronic fatigue syndrome, one of the things I gained from that is that I had a wonderful excuse not to go to family gatherings or social events or things I didn't want to do or places I didn't want to go or people I didn't want to see. So I was chronically ill, but it was also, I admit that sometimes I just go, oh, no, I'm not well enough for that. When actually maybe I should have shown up, or maybe I should have been honest and said, actually, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
But I used it as an excuse. We have this a lot in life. There are things that are potentially we're not happy with or not good in our lives, but we can use them to our advantage. And when we start doing that, it kind of keeps us stuck in that cycle because we're gaining something from the very thing that we don't want.
Yeah, I think it's a classic problem for, it's sometimes seen as for introverts, this notion of not going to things so that you don't have to get out of your comfort zone. But then later on, finding that people stop inviting you to things because they thought, well, that they don't really like me, or they don't really want to go, or they don't want to go to my stuff. And then they kind of get offended that you've not chased them to, and so it can be a vicious cycle. So sometimes you have to get out and do that. And also, if you do like being in a lot and you get out, then it means that you appreciate being in more because you've had the contrast. So you have to think carefully about what you're rejecting as well as what you're.
It's I think it's a big lesson for me this year is about honesty, and I wrote a big long post about it recently as well. And I think it's the same thing with the secondary gains. If we start to be honest about our reasons for doing things and not doing things, and not say it's to save someone's feelings, or it's because we're not well, or because of this or because of that, and actually it's because I don't want to do it, or I don't feel like doing it, or I'm actually saving myself in some way. If we can start to recognize that we're actually lying to ourselves and not we're kind of making the most of a bad thing, but in not a very truthful way, then I think it's easier to move on from these things and pass through them. But all the time that we're kind of still gaining in some way from this negative behavior, we keeps us stuck in that place.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it's one of the things as coaches we try and teach people to be able to say no to things, which is useful. But we do have to be careful that it can become a habit, because like I remember I was doing a detox, and I would go to a restaurant and I would say, I'd always order a Coke, and then I thought, right, I'm going to have a fresh orange and soda or something healthier, and instinctively I would always almost ask for the Coke, and I had to stop myself. And it's almost like every time somebody would phone you and say, would you like to go out, you might just say no, because that becomes your habitual response. It might not even be the truth of what you want, and then after you put the phone down, you're like, oh, why did I say that? So we have to become aware, I think.
I think that's the same with everything, isn't it? Becoming more conscious of what we're doing and when we're doing it. It's so easy to get caught up in things, and also get attention for things, and that's another thing that when you're ill for certainly prolonged periods of time and stuff, it can give you the attention you require or need or want or desire. It's probably the best word. And then it's easier to keep getting that attention that way than it is in maybe a more healthy way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that word attention is one we have to, we've got to be compassionate and careful with how we talk about that. But there is a downside to that attention thing. I sometimes, one of the things I sort of despair of a little bit is you might see someone on Facebook and they regularly say about their concern about their life, about their depression, whatever it is, and I kind of like feel this it's a bit risky, and that they should get in touch with somebody one to one. I think I had something recently, and I needed someone to talk to, and I spoke to you, and we just spoke one to one, and you sort of helped me make sense of it, and I went, actually, right, that's really good. I feel quite a bit better now. I hadn't broadcast to the whole world, so that when the next time I go to a social setting, the first thing people think about is, oh, are you over that, blah blah blah, and you're like, which takes you back to that thing that you maybe had already let go of, So the other danger is, because of the law of attraction, where what we give out, we attract more of. So if you say, let's say you're trying to get a new job, and you tell people I'm looking for a new job, and if anyone knows anything, please let me know. And then you've got that going out to your network of, maybe 100 people or something, and they're all thinking, right, let's see if we can find, there's an opportunity for that person, and they help you. Now, likewise, if you say you've got something really that's bad going on in your life, then they're going out and they're telling people, they're saying, oh, John is he's not doing very great, and blah blah blah, and this is all spreading like a virus. And then everyone who meets John eventually says, oh, John, he's that depressive guy, and that's the way they start with that person. And you're magnifying what you're saying, making it last longer than it maybe needs to. So it's just to be careful of that. So it's, the other thing is, people can sometimes, there are people who are also sensitive and are, for example, you'll know folk who've had chronic fatigue syndrome, and one of the things they're trying to do is have positive connections in their life, and they will actually almost try and get rid of these sort of friends because they're trying to look after their own energy, and that's not good for anyone either. So yeah, we've got to be very careful about the broadcasting thing. That's my thought on it anyway.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with that totally. And I see, when I was a child, I got quite a lot of attention if I wasn't well. My parents gave us quite a lot of free rein the rest of the time. I'm not saying they didn't give me attention, because they did, but I was quite left to my own devices. We were quite wild children.
Back to nature.
Sorry?
Back to nature.
Yeah. And it's getting quite dark on my face. I just moved the thing around a bit. I would think that's made it worse. Oh well. Yeah, and I wasn't aware of it at the time, obviously, but now I can look back on it and I can see that I gained a lot of attention from when I was ill. I got a lot of love and attention from them and from other people, and I then started to become ill, and I was obviously in my mental health was not good growing up, but it does make you wonder if I kind of almost manifested that myself to a degree, because it gave me what I wanted, or what I desired at the time, and so it was always beneficial for me to be ill or in pain or have something wrong with me.
This is going to be a huge aha moment for people, I think, just you saying that.
But then I see that growing as I get older as well. When I was finally diagnosed with the chronic fatigue syndrome, I was like, oh my God, this is the end of my life kind of thing. But also then people were like, oh, I feel for you, or my cousin's got that, or what can I do for you, and things like that. And I see that now. I can look back and I see that with everything, you know, the ex-partners that treated me badly. I got then lots of attention from friends and family because somebody had treated me really badly or in some way. And I notice that in myself, that is something I still definitely do to a degree. But I am, as we're going back to, I'm more conscious of it now, and hopefully not doing it as much. But we all do gain something from these bad things in our lives, and whilst we're gaining from it, we kind of keep stuck in it.
Yeah, it's a little bit seductive, you know. You're speaking to someone, and then you reveal something about yourself, and when it's a really genuine moment, especially one to one, it touches your heart, and they touch your heart just for a moment, and people sometimes crave that because they haven't felt that very often. And it, however, if you keep doing it all the time and keep complaining or whatever it is all the time, eventually it's not really that genuine connection. It's more, oh, here we go again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
One real point that you've touched on is that people often confuse love with attention, and that they can be different things. You know, I remember Anthony Robbins, who's one of the world's top success coaches. He does all these big giant events and everything, you know all about that. But he once had some guy that he had to go and see, and really to get through the hoops of being able to see someone like that, they have to have a real serious, you know, problem that no one's been able to figure out. And this particular guy had been knocked down by a car, but he'd been knocked down by a car something like 3 times, 3 different occasions, and they were really confused by this. So he went to see this guy, and he said, "So, you know, what's going on?" And he said, "So how did you feel first time you got hit by a car?" Expecting the guy to say, "Oh, I was in terrible pain. It was agony. It was horrible." But he said, "Oh, it was amazing." He said, "What do you mean it was amazing?" He said, "Well, all my friends came to see me. My family came to see me. Everyone gave me their attention. They brought me gifts. They told me how much they loved me. They told me how sad they would have been had I not survived, etc., etc." So then he gets well again, and he's back to normal life, and nobody's paying much attention to him. He's maybe not the best communicator, so he's kind of like just going on with his own thing, starts getting depressed, and then sees another car and just walks out in front of it, you know, and then does this a couple of times because people come again. And he said, "You know what?" He says, "When they're coming to see you the 3rd time, they're not thinking, I really love this person." They feel obligated to come. Like, that schmuck, why stuff? It's a pain in the neck, and you know, but they're coming out of obligation rather than out of love. So be careful that you don't obligate people to help you, and that you have a genuine connection, which is one of the reasons why it's good to have a lot of different friends, because you don't have to always go to the same friend each time you want to have a bit of compassion about something. And then that's dealt with there, and you can help them with something, and then that's it, done and dusted for that moment, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's where we came to deciding we were going to do this video, because we were talking about connection and genuine connections, and how it's so, like you touched on earlier, how it's so easy to make connections with someone because you're like, "Oh, I was burgled last week," and someone's like, "Oh, I was burgled last year," and then you have this instant connection. But like you said, it can become almost toxic because you're feeding into it, and it's feeding you in some way, because the next person, it's like, "Oh, I was abused," and someone else, "Oh, I was abused." And I know this because I've done it myself. You know, I had, like most people, quite a lot of not very nice things happen to me as I was growing up, and every time I'd find someone else that was abused, I was like, "Oh, we're the abused too, almost. You know, this person was abused also, and you know, these can be genuine connections, but if they're based on not very nice things happening in our lives, then we're kind of still feeding into that that toxicity there about that thing that happened. We'll keep replaying it and staying a victim to the situation because it benefits us in some way.
Yeah, definitely. It's uh, one of the saddest realities I found of being a therapist with helping people was how common, you know, abuse was in people's lives. You know, I don't think people realize just how common it is. And if they did, it might actually, I don't, you know, I don't know if it might be make it a little bit easier for them, knowing that that a lot of people have had that. Obviously, it's not something people talk about in polite conversation. But that was one of the things that was a bit of a surprise for me. And it is actually, with the right tools, it's something you can really help people with. You can help them to become empowered, because the person who's doing the abusing is the one that should have the guilt, that should have the pain, that should have the problem, not the person who was innocent in that. Having said that, I did, you know, I have on a couple of occasions seen people tend not to be in a therapy situation, because when they're in a therapy situation, they genuinely want help with that. But I have seen some people who talked about their quote unquote abuse, and I actually saw like a light in their eyes where they got excited by the attention that they were going to get at that moment. And I've seen that with a few things which is not healthy. You know, that's how they, you know, because it gets a rise out of people, and they're, you know, and people become suddenly very focused and attentive. And I thought that's a bit worrying. And then I was wondering with that particular person whether that was even true for them, or whether it was just that was their story. So there's got to be healthier ways to connect really than doing that. It's a sensitive topic. So, but yeah, it's and you know, most everyone is genuine who has that. Yeah.
I think it's when it's serving us in some way to be the victim, and I don't mean that in a horrible way to people, but you know, when we're on the other end of something like ill health or abuse or something like that, and it is serving us in some way, we're not healing from it fully. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle then to heal from chronic illness, for instance. Like every client I work with, we work with secondary gains, because that really does help clear a lot of their stuff to help them heal fully. And it's the same with abuse and things like that. You know, we're still, if we're gaining something from it in some way, even if it's a subconscious level, we're not aware that we're doing it at the moment, then it makes it incredibly hard to ever heal from that thing fully.
Yeah. That's true. You know, there's another thing that came to mind is you know, if you've ever read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, I know you have, because you've read.
No, actually, I've never read that book. No, just didn't. It's never resonated with me. So, but I hear it's very good.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I think in some cases well, as a man, I found it very beneficial, because I think it helps you to understand the mindset that women have, and which then helps you to become more understanding, more compassionate, more get where they're coming from. And I think it does work vice versa. But one of the things that I learned from the female energy is, now I know we're both male and female, and I know for you, for example, you can go into that male energy, which is kind of can be help with problem solving and things like that. And the female energy can be very good for empathy and being there for people and listening and all those good things. And we need both, especially in therapy work. But what I was saying was that with the female energy, can be a lot of, I know there's a lot of, in my circles, there's a lot of there's women's groups and things like that. And what happens is you can go there and you can express your truth about what's going on, and people listen compassionately. You get to say it out loud, and you get a sort of release, and then you feel better in that moment. And then you come back a week later and you might do the same thing again, and then you get another release, and then you're okay for a few days. And whereas as the one guy that sometimes gets invited to these sort of groups, because I can fit in, but I do see from the guy point of view, it's kind of like, just notice that you've mentioned this problem 3 or 4 times, and have you got any resolution with it? I'm like, well, no, we just want to be heard. And I was like, well, that's well and good, but you could actually get that resolved. And it sometimes causes a little bit of irritation. But I feel like I've got just 2 minutes, and I do maybe one of my NLP processes or something. Oh my God, that's great. I'm not bothered about that anymore. And so if you are a woman and you're only moving in female circles, or unless you have a coach like yourself who's got that dynamic that can do both, just to be aware of just being stuck in a cycle of talking about it, releasing it, and then coming back to it again and doing it again and again. So the male energy can be useful for, let's help and solve that problem. And it's fine, but that for guys, it's trying not to go straight in with that, but to actually, if you are a guy, to do the listening, be compassionate, be there, get the right timing. Sometimes it might not be till the next day that you say, yesterday you were mentioning, I had this idea, would you be willing to, listen? And likewise on the other side, is for men to be a bit more like the feminine, and do that listening, do that compassion. It's just, but people can get stuck in a loop, and there are solutions there and not realize, because they're moving in the same circles all the time.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, and also leads on to it. We're not saying in this chat, like, don't talk about your stuff to people, because that's actually really bad for you. Holding it all in, and that's what I used to do many moons ago, and that can cause depression and all sorts of things. So what we're saying is get it out, but then be aware of how it's using you or you're using it afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's the advantage of doing things one-to-one. Whatever you do one-to-one, or even in a small group, you're containing that thing in that group, and especially if you've got people that are confidential, if people come to see someone like a coach, then they know that story isn't going to be spread all over the world and stuff. It's just there at that moment where they're present with it, they get their thoughts clear about it, and then they can. Also, the other thing is, if they do go out in the world and do want to say something, it's more measured, it's more carefully thought out, what I do think is good to share is to share things in the past tense. So saying, for example, with yourself, I used to have chronic fatigue syndrome. I used to struggle to get out of bed, but now I've managed to do this Camino walk and do this 500-mile walk, and it's an amazing thing to tell about afterwards. But at the time, while you're still trying to figure it out, I'm not always sure it's the best thing to broadcast it to everyone, because you might have figured it out within the next hour, by which point everyone in the world is worried about you.
Yeah. And you have a good point with, I can't remember if you said it before actually we started recording or not. So you said, you know, if you have a problem with your partner, that and then you go and tell, you know, your family about it, and then, you know, an hour or two later you're all made up, but then you go and visit the family, and they're not happy with your partner anymore, and that causes problems. And I think, so I was about to say, I think we're all you know, do that from time to time, but I certainly have seen that I've done that. I've just wanted to kind of spill my guts at someone.
Yeah.
You know, make someone make me feel better, and then, you know, you might make up with that person, and then you wonder why everyone's funny with them.
Yeah, it's I remember I knew someone who they just got a driver's license, and they went out and they slipped on some leaves in the car, and they overturned the car, and it was just a freak accident. But I remember not telling my wife about what happened with them, because I knew she was nervous being in a passenger in people's cars as it was at the time. And I thought, I don't want her to have in her head this person is a dangerous driver, because they weren't. It was just a freak accident.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to sometimes be careful of the implications of sharing what's going on, you know.
But also, you know, from my experience this year is, I totally get that, because that's someone would, you know, potentially go into a panic attack or something. From my experience, I've noticed I've been not telling the truth fully always to save other people, what I thought was to save other people's feelings. And I recognize now that actually it's my own feelings I was trying to save.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to feel bad, or think bad of me, or not speak to me, or think I was a different person. And it's shocked me, because, you know, I don't feel that I am the person I used to be, where I was needy and wanted people's attention and didn't feel worthy and stuff. So I was very shocked that I'm still doing that on some level. So for me, I'm really trying now to make this more of a conscious effort to be honest with everything, even if potentially that causes problems. I think in the long run, it's better for everyone.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You know, there are people who have a value of truth. You know that that they must be truthful, and I think it is a good value, but we have to be a bit careful with it. I'm a Gemini, so I'm like communication thing from people, but the one thing I try and tell people is you know, truth without tact can be rudeness.
Yeah.
So we have to be, I know you know that, is we have to be careful, you know, to, you know, like someone says, you know, what do you think of my shoes? And they're about to go out for a night out, and you say, oh, they're the ugliest, horriblest shoes I've ever seen in my life. Now you might have that thought in your head, but it might be better to say, you know, what other shoes do you have? And maybe those red shoes, so we can compare. And you go, do you know what? I think they go better. They look nicer. Mm-hmm. And they go, all right, great. And then they go out feeling good, because you've been tactful.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So there are some, you know, I've known some people who maybe have a little bit of maybe neurodiversity, like autism or things like that, and they can be very direct about what they mean about something, and you're like, "Ooh, that was a bit close to the mark," because yeah, maybe that was true, maybe I was doing that, but you could have softened a little bit, you know. So yeah, so it's just being truthful, but taking care with the truth, I think, as well, you know, communicate that.
And I think that's, you know, the whole thing, the secondary gains, everything we've said whilst talking and things, it is about truth, isn't it? It's speaking our truth, feeling our truth. What are we gaining from these things? If you're stuck with something, or someone, or in some place in your life. What is it you're gaining from it? And be really truthful to yourself. Journal it, speak about it, get it out somehow, tap on it. Because I think the more truthful we are to ourselves, at least,
definitely,
the more we're going to be able to heal, to move through things, to communicate better. And it's going to cause a lot less hassles for us, both mentally and physically. So even if you can't be truthful to everyone else, can you be truthful to yourself? What is it you're stuck with doing at the moment? And what are you gaining from that in some way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what a best friend is useful for. To be, we're supposed to be really truthful. I mean, you can be truthful with everyone, but you can be a bit more. You can get into more detail with it. So, yeah, definitely. So the other thought I had was, if you are wanting to transform your life and you want to become a different person in that, let's say you had chronic fatigue syndrome or you had depression, and you want to be a positive, happy, connected person, it's hard. It becomes harder to change that role if you have had an ongoing newscast about your stuff all the time. Because people then think that's who you are. I remember even becoming a hypnotherapist, and my friends, they maybe identified me as that guy in the band, or that guy that works at that company. And it was difficult for people who knew me in the past to know that I could do the things that I can do now, and new people got it, but older people, they thought, well, no, I've got you in my head as being this sort of identity.
Typecast.
Yeah, so I actually stopped doing my band stuff for a couple of 2 or 3 years, I think, when I was doing hypnotherapy, and I thought it was for other reasons, but I think it was actually, look, this is my identity. I'm doing this thing now, and then once that was embedded and that people accepted it, then I kind of went back and started doing my band stuff again, But it was kind of weird. Every time I would go somewhere, people would say to me, talk to me about the band straight out the door, and which was fine. But then eventually it became a bit predictable, and I can imagine people saying that they've got some problem, and then every time they meet somebody goes, "Oh, I hear you have that problem," blah 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 blah, and it's like it stops them from being something new, So it's another thing.
You still got, like you can still have attachments to people and cords to it. It seems you can also have that to, health issues and problems and stuff, You're not making space for the new whilst you're still living in the old. And that's different, if you're still in the chronic illness or something. But if your story is, I'm an abused drug user, blah blah blah, from the past and stuff, and you're still in that story now, you're not making space for that new you, whatever that is.
Yeah, totally. I've kind of I don't know if freaked out is the right word, but some of my clients will be like, they come and you come and help them with something, and then I say, how do you feel? And they say, well, it's great. I don't have that negative voice in my head anymore. I feel really good. I feel positive. I say, okay, so one thing I want you to do is when you go and meet people, I don't want you to tell them that you have bipolar or whatever it is, because what they used to do is they used to go and meet people and they would start talking about, oh, just before you get to know me too much, I should let you know I have this, blah blah blah, and that was how they would start their conversation with someone, and that would be their identity. And so I would say to them, look, stop doing that, because that's your business, or to people that you're really close to, or your medical team or your therapist or whatever. Don't go telling everyone about this stuff. Just be Susan or whatever your name is. Just be that person, and go from there. And they're like, oh, but that's in their mind. That's how I connect with people. That's how I start.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do that. And so that's something I would suggest. People that maybe who are on your page who maybe have chronic fatigue syndrome or something like that. If they meet somebody new, don't make that your first thing that you tell them about.
Yeah, your label.
Yeah, I mean, tell them you like sewing, you like horses, and whatever it is, something else, and give yourself a chance to be somebody new with them.
Yeah, definitely. You're just feeding into it, aren't we, again? So yeah. I thought of something really inspired to say then, but clearly it's just gone.
You'll remember to remember in a moment.
It's something to share another time, maybe. So yeah, I think, like I said, it's being truthful. It's being aware of what we're doing as well. And maybe, slowing down, being more conscious, getting it out. What are the things that bother you in other people as well? Am I doing those? Because quite often we're mirroring, and I that's one of the things I notice that's helped me myself, is that when I'm saying this, somebody's done this to me, or this has happened, or something, it's like, oh, okay, am I doing that? Is that why that's bothering me? I mean, I might not be doing it to that extent, but am I doing that in some way? And I'm like, oh gosh, I am.
We can all become aware of it. Great, isn't it?
Yeah. But and it's also remembering we're human, as well.
I mean, I think we should tell people we get these same challenges ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
Where we think, this is a problem, and we're not always on it all the time.
No.
So nobody is.
No. None of us are perfect, and I think I see that a lot with clients, that they, and I did it, thought that the people that were on the screen or teaching or coaching or writing books or whatever, they were an inspired, enlightened guru kind of thing, and they had it all sorted. That's just not true. That's, these people are doing what they're doing because they've struggled too, and they're human and they live in society. So unless they went and lived in a cave, they're going to be triggered still every day by stuff that happens around them. What is different is that hopefully we learn from it. Instead of just getting sucked under by it.
Yeah, I think the main difference of being, say, if you've been through a challenge and you've personal development and you've grown, or you've become a coach or whatever, you don't necessarily have to be a coach. But the thing is, people who seem to be happier most of the time, they have awareness. So they they might have a feeling for a couple of days and then go, wait, what is this? So like I mentioned, I was eating chocolate with nuts every day, and I was like, what? And I stopped and I went, whoa, before I was going to eat this, I was like, why am I eating this every day? And I tuned in with myself, and because I'm a hypnotherapist, I got the word magnesium, and I thought, all right, I'm not getting enough magnesium. Magnesium are in nuts, and I went to supplement in that, and that stopped that whole problem. So the thing is, first of all, it's awareness, and the other thing is that we have an ability to bounce back quicker because we have tools, and we are aware of, all right, I've seen this pattern before with myself or with other people, and we can pull ourselves out quicker. And I think that's maybe for people, is just to get off of autopilot and to become aware and go, actually, at this moment, I need to call my best friend and give advice. Or I need to go and meditate, or I need to change what I'm doing, or I need to exercise, and just to become aware. And I think that's one of the key things that you do as you get better at this stuff.
Yeah, I did a video a couple of 3 maybe years ago or something called the Why Game, and I find that quite helpful. It's like, why am I doing this? And the first thing will be, oh, because this person's hurt me, or this horrible thing has happened. And then it's like, but why why did that person hurt me, or why has that horrible thing happened? And then I keep asking why until I get down to something like, because I'm craving attention, or because I need to heal this thing, or whatever it is. And there's usually, you know, there's something I'm getting from it in some way, or trying to get from it. It's probably the best, and I find that really helpful. Is to kind of just keep asking. It's that like annoying game that you used to play as kids, that your parents would just go mental about, because you'd be like, why?
It is the beginning of wisdom, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just becoming more, like you said, it's more conscious, more aware of our stuff.
Yeah.
Because like I said just now, it's like we are human, and it's okay to fuck up. But
for professionals, you must understand.
it's just not okay to keep doing the same thing, because then you've really got to look at yourself and think, why am I doing this? And it's not because God is bad, or, you know, bad things happen to good people, or all of these things that, you know, people say and stuff. It's because in some way we are either gaining from it or trying to gain from it in some way. Or we're stuck in this cycle of secondary gain, you know, and that we're not, most of the time we're not doing that consciously. So I'm not saying to people you're bad people or something. I'm just saying we're stuck in some sort of subconscious, probably, cycle that is actually quite easy to bring to the surface if we start being honest with ourselves.
So, totally, yeah. You said something there that made me think about something I can't remember what it was.
Well, I've remembered my earlier thing, if that helps to fill in the gap.
I knew you would, so I'll remember mine.
It was going back to like, I can't remember why it was, but it's one of the things that I've started to get my clients with chronic fatigue syndrome to do is reword things. So rather than call it a crash, we can call it a blip, or whatever resonates with them.
Brilliant.
Because again, the way you're wording things, it makes it solid, it makes it happen almost in your body and mind. It becomes a thing then. So with the word crash for chronic fatigue syndrome people, I feel that's quite negative in a way, because it's suggesting that you've smacked into something, you're stuck there, and it's going to be really hard work to get back out of it again. So we talk about words that resonate better for a temporary thing instead. So blip seems to be one that works for quite a lot of people, because, you know, a blip can just be a moment almost.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And I think that's, you know, I think we've talked about it before, is there's a lot of power in the words we're using. And it's to be careful of the words we're using, like when people say this is killing me, or I can't think of another one now, but those sorts of things, it's really not good for us.
People say things like I'm raging, or they say you know, I had a panic attack, or things like that.
Blood boiling.
Yeah, and you think, well, I thought, you know, I don't really use that word panic, you know, in my, you know, my reference to it is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you know, panic, and it's kind of funny, you know. And so one of the fastest ways to help someone, for example, if they have panic attack, is to actually, with hypnotherapy, is you actually change it into calm. You know, you almost delete that word, so they will still understand the word, but they don't use it themselves. And they say, well, I'm not feeling as calm as I would like to feel. But as soon as you say that, you actually bring that word calm into it, and you start to feel the feeling of the word calm, the vibration of the word calm, and you actually are going towards calm. You know, so yeah, be very careful of the language that you're using, for sure. So I remembered what that other thought was.
There you go.
So yeah, when you know, you were talking about why, and one of the whys is, what did we create in our thoughts before we went to that situation? So if you're going to, you know, you're going to go to work, and you're going to a meeting, and you're thinking, oh, you know, that meeting was kind of confrontational last time, and you know, what happens if they do that to me again, and I get put on the spot, and da 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 da. And then you go into the meeting with this awkward energy, and then you end up getting put on the spot, and all those things tend to manifest. Whereas if you actually could say, right, I'm going to meditate, you know, before I go to work this morning, and I'm going to visualize myself going to that meeting, everybody having a bit of a lightheartedness, a bit of a giggle, and the meeting being really constructive and being over in 20 minutes and done, you know, and everybody just getting on with their work. If you take that energy with you, you're much more likely to have a better outcome. People do read us and read our energy and respond to it. So a lot of the time it is our thoughts that we had ourselves, often unconsciously, that created the problem.
Yeah.
We're a part of that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's one of the reasons and meditation works the same as I say to people, to be more heart-centered, because it is our heads doing that and manifesting that then.
Yeah.
So when we drop into our hearts, excuse me, we're not doing that so much then.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
One of the last things to say about the secondary gain thing is to check and see if you actually are allowing yourself to love yourself, to have that self-love. And because people are often givers, they don't really receive very much. But it's important to remember that your job is, first of all, is for you. Because if everyone looks after themselves, then the whole world will look after itself. Then you've got more energy, more resources. So, you know, have that question with yourself: am I allowing self-love into my life? And you know, do I need to go to external sources to get all of my feelings, or can I find some of them from within? By just saying to yourself simply, I mean, I get people sometimes even say to their unconscious, I love you, and I appreciate you, and thank you for all that you do for me. And I know you're doing your best. And if you have that conversation with yourself, just see how you feel. It's kind of can be quite, you know, people can get quite, wow, that's amazing. So if you want to know more about self-love, Faith and I have done a video on that, and it's a good follow-on from this one.
Maybe I'll link that below if I remember. So,
you will.
Okay, well, I think that's everything we wanted to share. We've rambled on for much longer than I anticipated.
As always.
Yeah, so just don't be put off by the length of the video, just pause it or something. Yeah, and I'll link to Lester's pages and contacts and things underneath the video as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's at transformation-station.com.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening to us. If you have any questions, then you can find us both on our email, on our websites below, or on the social media platforms as well. So feel free to ask.
And keep an eye out on Faith's other videos, because for this topic, there's some other stuff there as well, which you'll find helpful.
Thanks. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.